with us, we have Godfrey from ACMAD. Godfrey is a senior meteorologist, as I said, working with ACMAD as a weather and climate services for DRR. Godfrey has a background in modeling, operational forecasting, and has good knowledge in developing high impact forecasts and impact-based warnings that serve different socioeconomic sectors. With us, we have other panelists who will be mainly talking to us about the implications of the evolving El Nino on different sectors. We have Brenda Lazarus, who is a food security and early warning economist with FAO's sub-regional office for Eastern Africa. Brenda provides technical leadership on early warning systems and anticipatory action programming, emergency agriculture, and regional food security analysis. We also have Vincent Okoth. Vincent Okoth is a geo-developer at ICPAC. He works on early warning systems, impact-based early warning, and socioeconomic vulnerability to support disaster risk management engagements across IGAD member states. We also have Dr. Charles. Dr. Charles is an epidemiologist and public health leader who is working with African CDC as a senior technical officer. He has more than 15 years of experience in health security and climate resilient health systems across Africa, and his work focuses on integrating climate resilience into public health through evidence-based multi-sectoral approaches. So welcome, my name is Eunice Koech. I'll be moderating today's webinar. And just to confirm that everyone is with us, please introduce yourselves in the chat section. Tell us which organization you're working with. And as the presentations go on, you'll have a chance to send your questions in the Q&A sections. And also we'll have an opportunity to ask our questions at the end of this. Please confirm to us that you can hear us well and clear so that we know that we are able to reach to every one of you. Otherwise, welcome. And we'll go straight into our first presentation. Our first presentation will be from Godfrey from ACMAD, and he will be giving us an update on the latest status of ENSO, as well as the evolution and the outlook. We will have 15 minutes of presentation, but our subsequent presenters will have 10 minutes each. Please, let's keep time. I'll alert you when you have 2 minutes remaining. Godfrey, go ahead. Kindly share your presentation, and your 15 minutes start now.
Thank you, Eunice. Thank you for ICPAC for giving us this opportunity. I'm gonna share with you the status of the ENSO, and I'm gonna present you the update for the recent outlook we convene with other RCCs across Africa, and this focus is for July to October this year. So I'm going to talk about the current situation, also state some climate drivers, and also provide this the final outlook. So generally, during this July, August, September, we mainly have enhanced rainfall over the equatorial area. The same on of August, September, October. So mainly that's the area where we are on the blue shaded. That's where we do expect and the rainfall, these climatological maps. So for the current situation, this is the SSTs for from this season from March. So then you can see that the warming is really present since the last 19 days, and thus you can see this one with the situation from June. This was seen that there's El Nino. There's an area where we do detect the El Nino was really quite warming. So then what's happening during the past El Nino. So that means that the El Nino has different phases, where there's some area we do have experience heavy rainfall. So looking for now this why people some media saying that we are going toward the super El Nino, although according to the WMO categorization, they still have the three categories: weak, moderate, or strong. So then you can see when you look for the daily surface temperature on this basin Nino 3.4, you see that's for this year we really the magnitude is very high. So that's why more the media they are just talking about the super El Nino. And then when looking for the outlook from the NOAA, looking for these anomalies, you see that from May, we observed the increased temperature anomalies. The same, we see when we look at the forecast from July up to December, so all the models are confirmed that it's gone beyond, it's going to be toward the El Nino, the strong El Nino. So now there is no doubt that we will have El Nino for this year. So you can see up to January, February, March, or signal on the red, that means the El Nino presence are there. So when you look at that, how strong will be this El Nino? So then you see like from October, even from August, we will have like 80% of El Nino to be occurred. And this situation will continue up to max next year. So now the thing is El Nino is present, and so how it will affect our region. So looking for these analog years, so we show that the 97, 98 is to look similar for this current year. And the analog years, well, we wanted to see what's happened in the past years with those analog years and also the current year. So similarly, you can see from July, October, August, September, this 1997, 2 and the 23, and also the bottom one is when the current focus. So we can look like this situation will be higher than what we used to see. The same signal still present of August, September, October, and with the high magnitude for ENSO anomalies. So this is normally the general picture when you say that's how El Nino do affect different region. Well, some parts for like Sahel, it's dry, but for the Great of Africa, it's wet, while the southern part is dry. So there is not only the ENSO we have to consider during these phases. So there are some interconnections. So here I'm going to give you a table where we do this is come up with the discussion of the RCCs across Africa, where we look at the different drivers which affected also the region during the El Nino phases. So you can see, for example, in the Northern Africa, there is no really direct connection, but for them, they mainly drivers. It's on it's the Northern Africa is influenced with the atmospheric, the NOAA, and also Mediterranean Ocean Index. Why for West Africa, the monsoon season, which affected, but also there are some contrasting rainfall impact across the region, and depending on ENSO, but also the Atlantic Ocean. That's the case for 2015. For Central Africa, there is it's mixed. The El Nino don't coexist with the negative South Atlantic diapole, which can practically mitigate equatorial dryness. But the strong connection is on Eastern Africa, where the OND, the El Nino is mainly associated with the enhanced rainfall and the flooding. Jazz is associated with suppressed rainfall in the northern part of Eastern Africa. And also, we should notice that on Eastern Africa, there is a clear interaction, a strong interaction with the IOD during the OND season, and also during the positive IOD, the flood is increasing in this particular region. For the Southern Africa, all events during the El Nino are dry, and like the example for the 97, 98, which remain also during the one of the strongest El Nino, but also there is the interaction with Benguela, which also can give the dryness. For the Southwest Indian Ocean, there is also enhanced rainfall, which was also coupled with the positive IOD, and also the cyclone Miracoa also from the mainland during these events. So this is the outlook for July to September, where the Central Sahel is expected to have above rainfall conditional, while the part of the Horn Africa as in the West Africa will be dry than normal condition, and the Central Africa and Southern Madagascar indicated the reduced rainfall probabilities, and then the Northern and the Southern Africa, including the coastal belt, the Central West Africa will get a wetter than normal condition. And the desert area and the white shaded is the off season, while the gray is the climatology. For August to October, we do expected rainfall over above normal rainfall is expected in the Eastern Africa, such as Eastern Ethiopia, Somalia, Eastern Kenya, and much also of Madagascar, which may do also with highlight risk on flash flood and associated for socioeconomic impact. The part of the Central Africa and the Gulf of Guinea as well, in West Africa, we expect a near normal to above normal rainfall. Others like South Sudan, Northern DRC, we expected to have below normal rainfall as well. Uganda, most part of Kenya, and the northern Tanzania as well, Rwanda and Burundi, and the northern Angola. In terms of the temperature, the Northern Africa, we experience the high probability for high temperature during this period, and even also some also Madagascar, and there's some pocket for the Southern Africa like Namibia and Southern Mozambique. Thank you, dear participant. That's what I have to share with you. I hope I meet the time requested. Over to you, Eunice.
Yes, thank you very much, Godfrey. That was a very comprehensive update on what we expect, and looking at what has been happening in the previous years, comparing with the evolution. Thank you very much for such a great update, and thank you also for saving us some time. So we'll go straight to what this now implies to different sectors. And to start us off in that section, we have Brenda Lazarus, who will tell us what the expected El Nino is likely to mean for the agriculture sector. Godfrey, if you can take down your presentation, thank you very much. Brenda.
Great, thank you so much. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me just pull up my presentation. Maybe while I'm pulling this up, so I'm going to be covering both the agricultural sector as well as the food security sector. I would highlight that I'm with the Subregional Office for Eastern Africa, but that this presentation was jointly done with FAO's Regional Office for Africa that's based out of Accra. So this is a joint effort between both the East Africa office and then our continental office in Accra. So starting off, this slide just basically is showing what was just presented in the previous PowerPoint. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, just highlighting that we see varied impacts from El Nino depending on where you look within the continent, below average rains across Southern Africa. In Eastern Africa, it's really varied depending on where you look, with Western areas like Sudan, South Sudan, Western Ethiopia, generally associated with below average rains between June and September. Then if you move to the Horn Horn of Africa, above average rains and flooding near the end of the year. And then in Western Africa, generally El Niños are associated with below average rains during the current rainy season, running from June to September. So with regards to what are we anticipating for impacts on both the agricultural sector and food security for each of these regions? The slide that I'm showing here is basically a summary of a recent analysis that was published by FAO JEWS, which is FAO's Global Information Early Warning System at the global level, and then it's been complemented by some information on the East Africa side from the Food Security and Nutrition Working Group, which is co-led by FAO and ICPAC. Across Western Africa, as was presented, typically during El Niño years, you would see below average rainfall during the June to September season, though I think the signals for El Niño impacts in this region are a little less strong in comparison to what we see for Eastern and Southern Africa. With that in mind, this analysis that was done by FAO JEWS highlighted a couple of different countries of concern that we definitely need to be monitoring in the next couple of months. The first one being Niger and Chad, where below average rains could threaten both millet and sorghum production in a couple of key producing areas in both those countries. Also, this could extend up into the northern parts of Nigeria, though the dry conditions would likely be kind of limited up just in that far northern area, and so it would likely not have major impacts on national cereal production, where a lot of the cereals are grown in other areas. Furthermore, if you move into the Central Africa area, this analysis also highlighted the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as forecasted below average rains between June and October could threaten their main season of maize production there. So then transitioning over, so West and Central Africa, their main season is the season that's concerning right now, so the June to September season. East Africa, it's very split depending on where you look. So if you're looking at the main rainy season across the western parts of the region. So this is a unimodal rainy season that runs roughly from June to September. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a rainy season over areas like Sudan, South Sudan, Western Ethiopia, the Karamoja region of Uganda, and Eritrea. And generally, El Niños are associated with below average rains there. Unfortunately, we have seen some concerning signs already for this rainy season, particularly if you look at some areas in Western Kenya as well as Western Ethiopia that have a very long growing season, but are kind of really key productive areas for supplying both national as well as regional cereal supplies. We're already seeing some very kind of problematic rainfall performance. And so we've seen after a very heavy rainfall in March, dry spells since April, and then June rainfall in many of these areas was near record breaking in low rainfall amounts. And so a very, very poor June season after basically dry spells since April. With that in mind, we're already seeing reports of both crop wilting as well as poor germination across parts of these areas. I know FuseNet just sent me some pictures yesterday from the Kenya side showing very poor crop conditions there. Similar reports on the northern parts of South Sudan. And so already we're starting to see a very dry situation across a lot of these areas. And then what's concerning is the forecast that was just shown that this dryness will likely continue throughout the rest of the rainy season and through September. I think one kind of country that's particularly of concern because the highest probability is if you look at, for example, ICPAC's forecasts for below average rains are Ethiopia. And analyses that have been done by the Climate Hazard Center out of University of California, Santa Barbara are indicating that what we're seeing in Ethiopia right now could be very similar to what we saw in 2015. In that year, due to both a poor kind of start to the season, a rapid strengthening of an El Niño, and then very poor rainfall during June to September, they saw a reduction in national production by about 14% in comparison to the previous year, and above average import requirements as a result. Then finally, moving kind of from the western parts of the region to now the eastern parts of the East Africa region. And so in the eastern areas, kind of the Horn of Africa, they have two rainy seasons, one from March to May, another one between October and December. And that October to December rainy season during El Niño years, we generally see an increased probability of above average rainfall and flooding during this season. Right now, global models are pretty much in agreement. Many of these global models are showing a very high probability of above average rains, in some cases over 70% probability, so very, very high. And that definitely increases significant concerns about flood risks. What I would say here is that we are many months out from the start of this rainy season. That said, the October-December rainy season is much easier to forecast than the March to May rainy season, and the impacts of El Niño are fairly well known for this season. And so with that in mind, I think we should feel very comfortable with, if you're working on humanitarian programs or anticipatory action programs, of implementing anticipatory action or risk mitigation efforts for kind of flood risks in these areas, even though we are still many months out from the start of the season. The other thing I would highlight for kind of impacts with this season, absolutely flooding does have major impacts on both agricultural production and food security for households that are affected. But generally, years when we see above average rainfall across the Horn of Africa, that also has very favorable impacts for agricultural production. And so in areas like Somalia that have been very dry over the last couple of seasons, this will help support drought recovery. It will generally lead to above average crop production in many areas, as well as a reduction in food insecurity. So very concerning for kind of the specific areas that are going to be flood impacted, but it also has some positive implications. Then moving over to southern Africa, El Niños in this region are strongly associated with below average rains during their main rainy season, which runs from October to April. Maize, which is the region's key staple crop, is highly vulnerable to water stress and to drought. And so if we do see below average rainfall, this could have major implications for production levels throughout the region. Particularly, we need to be watching South Africa. So South Africa plays a major role in supplying regional cereal stocks for other countries in the Southern Africa region. So if we do see below average production there, that could have knock-on effects for neighboring countries. The one piece of good news, though, on the Southern Africa side is that the recent harvests there have been very good. And so we saw record high productions in both South Africa as well as Zambia. And so that could lead to some above average carryover stocks going into the next season, which will probably help to mitigate some of the price impacts of potentially below average production. I just wanted to highlight that all of these shocks to each of these regions are very much occurring in the context of very high levels of food insecurity across Africa. So this is data from the most recent global report on food crises, highlighting that if you look across the continent, we're seeing about 149 million people that are highly food insecure, IPC phase 3 and above. And unfortunately, that we've seen that this is a rising trend. If you look at basically 10 years worth of data from the global report, unfortunately across the region or across the continent, we're seeing a steady increase in food security numbers. So I've given you kind of an overview of what we'll likely see, but what exactly could we potentially be doing to help to mitigate the impacts of this upcoming El Niño? I wanted to highlight that from FAO side, we very much kind of are pushing an anticipatory action approach, working to mitigate shocks before impacts are felt rather than just doing emergency response afterwards. And so with that in mind, we recently just published anticipatory action appeal with WFP. It's a global appeal focused on two different areas, one on kind of protecting local food production and two, safeguarding food security. I'm not presenting this because I want to be advocating for funding both for FAO and WFP, but I do think that the actions that are laid out for each of the different regions are things that if you're involved in the humanitarian sector or if you're working for a national government that is affected by these El Niño impacts, I think you could take a lot of the activities that are suggested here and use them for your own programming as well. So starting off with the Southern Africa region, like I said earlier, this is a region that is going to be impacted by drought. And so recommended anticipatory actions for this agricultural and food security sector include drought-tolerant varieties of seeds and agricultural inputs, cash transfers, early warning messaging, providing livestock feed and animal health support, as well as providing water harvesting and irrigation support. The one thing that I would say is good news on the Southern Africa side is the window of opportunity for anticipatory actions are quite wide. And
Brenda, try to wrap up.
Okay, I will quickly go down, jump, just highlighting here that we still have many months to be planning anticipatory actions. And so that's the good news here, is that we have a lot of time to be implementing, if we trigger now, to be implementing anticipatory actions. So I'm just going to jump over. We'll be sharing the PowerPoint afterwards, or you can check out the appeal. Just on the other actions, East Africa, we have actions both for drought as well as flooding. I would highlight on the drought side, the window of opportunity is very, very rapidly narrowing because planting season is right now. So that's something to keep in mind. But we do have a lot of opportunities to be doing mitigation efforts for flooding at the end of the year. And then West Africa, again, drought interventions. Again, this window of opportunity is very tight at this point. Finally, I just wanted to wrap up my presentation with just some resources. If you are interested in monitoring kind of what this El Nino will mean for food security and agriculture, we have a variety of different resources within FAO. As I mentioned earlier, FAO Jews just recently released an alert looking at both El Nino impacts as well as the Middle East crises impacts on food security globally. We have a recent release of some data that basically is looking at historical ACES data, looking at during El Nino years, what are the agricultural areas that we've seen the greatest impacts. So you can check that out there. And then if you're interested in flooding in East Africa, the Data and Emergencies team has an excellent flood platform where you can kind of explore exposure of agricultural areas and populations to flood risks. I think then at the bottom, there's some country-specific and regional-specific links as well. But given time, I think I'll just pass it back over to Eunice right now. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Very interesting information there. Looking at how the dries in the northern sector and how the wet in the equatorial sector and also the dry during the wind in the southern sector is really some interesting information that lets us know how this influence agriculture in the coming months and even currently. Thank you so much. Keep your questions coming in the Q&A section. So for Brenda and Godfrey, if you are able to answer any questions in the chat and then and in the Q&A section, please go ahead. So, but we will still have a chance to respond to questions after our presentations. Then, so we will move to our next presenter. That is Vincent Okoth. He will be telling us what this implies to the disaster risk management sector. Over to you, Vincent. And meanwhile, as you upload your slides, Vincent, Dr. Charles, if you can hear us, kindly accept a prompt that asks you to be promoted as a panelist. Paula will be sending you a prompt shortly. Kindly accept and you will be able to share your slides later as a panelist. Vincent, if you can share a different screen, you sharing?
Yes, you see my screen, right?
And no, yes, that's
Okay.
fine. Great, go ahead.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes.
Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Vincent Okoth, and I'll be presenting the implications of ENSO for disaster risk management. So just a recap of what my predecessors have said. The ENSO pulls the Eastern Africa in two directions simultaneously, whereby we experience suppressed rains over the northern sector of the Greater Horn of Africa region during the Jeja season, that is June, July, August, September. And it also enhances the OND season. So these two implications means that the region may potentially face both droughts and floods. And that means that for some countries in the region, they need to come up with mitigation measures for either drought or floods or both hazards. And then some of the impacts that we are looking towards is the concurrent emergency will, of course, strain the shared humanitarian resources, the national response capacities, especially in countries that are likely to experience both floods and drought. And then also we may have overlapping appeals as a result of the impact of ENSO across the region. So some of the advisories that maybe we would recommend associated with both events is that at the regional level as well as the national levels, there should be efforts to mobilize resources and discussions for both floods and drought, so that these appeals are done simultaneously. Also, the national contingency frameworks need to be activated for both scenarios at once, particularly for countries such as Kenya and Ethiopia, where they have both drought and flood zones. And then also, since the forecast is unfolding, also as the season unfolds, we encourage that we don't wait for the forecasts. We don't wait for the forecasts as the season unfolds, but instead we need to have proactive approaches, even as we wait for the forecast to unfold during the season. This will help us also avoid postponing mitigation measures, as well as also overcommitting or undercommitting resources where need be. And then also another is that will come with these events is that we need to adapt a staged decision framework. For instance, we should not take no regret actions, or we also need to predefine trigger dependent actions that escalate as also the whole event unfolds. And then this is now specifically for the northern sectors that are likely to be impacted by below normal rainfall. That is specifically Ethiopia, Sudan, and Eritrea, who are currently in their May, June, July, August, September season. So this is likely to be insufficient pasture and water deficits in the agropastoral belt. And also there will be heightened risks of early transhumance and resource-based conflicts due to the dry conditions influenced by ENSO in that region. So as Brent had mentioned, also there will be also potential food insecurity and conflict-driven displacement, particularly in Sudan and South Sudan, where response access is already constrained. So this is just a cross-cutting advisory now across the Great Horn of Africa. As a region, we need to maintain impact-based forecasting, and we also need to utilize the multi-hazards watches throughout the event, such as the East Africa Hazards Watch, that gives timely updates. And then cross-border coordination is also encouraged on shared basins across the region, as well as cross-border displacement hotspots. And then also we need to document the activations, impacts, and the affected population data during this season. These are very important for lessons learned. Otherwise, thank you, and over to you, Eunice.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vincent, for that presentation. Very key on when issues escalate to disasters, what is expected of each and every actor in the field of disaster risk management. So continue asking your questions in the Q&A section. And panelists, please continue responding to some of the questions so that once we are done with the presentations, we'll have more questions being asked and most of the questions in the chat should have been handled. So we now go to the next presenter. Apologies, we are not able to have someone to give us the implications on the water sector. So we'll go straight to Dr. Charles, who will tell us what the current situation and what is expected during the short rainfall season means to the health sector. Over to you, Dr. Charles.
Can you confirm that you can see my slides?
Yes, we can see. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I think all of the climatic context to this discussion has been very well captured by previous speakers. What I'm going to be talking about, because all of the ENSO predictions are all signals, and what I try to capture in my presentation is how do these signals impact health action? What does the forecast mean for the health sector? So we're looking at the El Nino, and we're looking at health security implication, and then I try to highlight some anticipatory actions that we need to undertake. One clear thing that I want us to take away from this discussion for the health sector is the fact that ENSO is not just a climate phenomenon. It is a predictable driver of public health risk and an opportunity for anticipatory action. Why do I say this? I think as I go through the presentation, I will take you through some historical predictions and ENSO's occurrences in the past and what impact it has had on the health sector. But for these specific predictions and this climatic period that we're looking at, the health sector needs to be significantly concerned and pay attention. Why? Because of the significant probabilities that these predictions have actually showcased. With approximately 80% probability in El Nino occurrences in the June-August season, and greater than 90% probability of extension till late 2026. And the fact that the occurrences have been projected to be of moderate to strong intensity in terms of range, it should be worrisome for the health sector. And if you look at it from a global context, there is, of course, predictions that there is higher likelihood of above normal global temperatures, increased climate variability, and extreme weather. And then these all have implications for the health sector. So health systems should not just be preparing, we should be transitioning from preparedness planning to operational readiness. Now, not at first alert, not waiting until when the first floods start occurring or when the droughts start showcasing their impacts. We should start working now. I want to also highlight that the forecast itself is not the disaster. We shouldn't be so carried away by the forecast as we should be about the failure to be able to act on the forecast. And that is usually the difference between our continent and many of the other developed climes. It's not like these occurrences do not occur there, but it's just that when these forecasts are made, all the various sectors do not just present the anticipatory action and the implication, but they actually action it out. And that is why we have minimal casualties and reduced impact across all systems. And that is what this webinar is actually calling for. So we should be able to move from that discussing it to actually acting out what we've discussed. So in that context, I just wanted to highlight the fact that how the ENSO signals shape Africa's continental health security outreaches. Of course, I don't want to bore us with the trajectory of events that happen across the ocean domains, but I need us to see how this is cross-cutting in the sense that it does just not cut one single disease outbreak, but it acts through multiple interconnected pathways. And you can see all of that. And that is why oftentimes from the health sector, we say that health is the face of climate change, because whether it's affecting water systems, or it's affecting agriculture in terms of food security, or it's environmental in terms of ecosystem, all of the impacts are actually felt by the human persons. It can either come through direct disease outbreaks in terms of vector-borne diseases, it can come through disruption of health services, or it can even affect livelihoods that has implication for ability for people to be able to secure their health. So these are some of the things I needed to set out as a baseline. But permit me to also highlight the fact that this is not the first time predictions are being talked about, but it's also good that we take ourselves down historical memory lane to see that regions across the continent have been significantly impacted with specific episodes of ENSO's predictions, ranging from outbreak of water-preventable diseases, vector-borne diseases, to mass displacements that have caused conflicts, with also attendant health implications. We've seen also we had prolonged drought in Southern Africa. This has caused acute malnutrition, food insecurity, wasting, including the very high cholera outbreak that occurred in Zambia during the last El Nino drought season, where it was even predicted that there was increased cases of HIV/AIDS, which ordinarily we would not have linked with climate change. But as a result of the prolonged drought, many young female students dropped out of school and were exchanging sex for food, for fish, among fishermen communities. And it was actually documented by the UNFPA of the increasing rise of HIV/AIDS. So these are some of the highlights that are usually missed because they do not occur as mass emergency situations with multiple casualties, but there's a lot of disease outbreaks that portend great danger to the health system, even after those El Nino flash occurrences. The Horn of Africa is also a highly impacted zone where many of us are currently staying. Now, heat waves is also increasing ordinarily, and then you can imagine the implication when drought is combined to all of these other occurrences. So across the health sector, we see rising impacts and significant impacts. So the historical record is very clear. Each major El Nino episode produced significant preventable health consequences across Africa. So this forecast actually forecasts it to be moderate to strong, which is actually something that we should all pay significant attention to, especially for those of us that are in the health sector and this webinar. ENSO affects every major public health program. It does not just result in the occurrence of diseases, it can also reduce the effectiveness of already in-planned public health interventions. And these have been shown by factual evidences across many of our geographies. So whether you're looking at vector-borne diseases, we know that this can actually completely alter vector dimensions in terms of ranges and penetration. We've seen even here in Kenya, where counties which were hitherto malaria-free are currently having endemic malaria as a result of vector migrations across many boards. So whether you look at emergency care, whether you look at health infrastructure or laboratory capacity, all of these have potentials for being impacted by the ENSO predictions. So climate becomes a multiplier of existing vulnerabilities, and therefore we must all simultaneously see how we can be able to use and leverage this forecast to be able to act in the health sector. I didn't try to delineate this by geolocations, but I did try to delineate it by occurrences that happen by virtue of those geolocations. And so there are two major geolocations by virtue of my presentation. One is those that are flood prone, and many of them are in the Eastern African region. And then there are also places that are drought prone, and many of them are in the Southern African region. But even within the Eastern African region, there's a lot of disaggregated occurrences or variation in terms of these occurrences. In the Horn of Africa, you can see even in the same country where when you are having significant flood as a result of this El Nino flash rains, you're also having drought in some other areas. But either way, there are significant cross-cutting health implications that are specific to these geolocations. We know ACMAD produces meningitis outlook, and you can see that this has potentials for increment, especially for areas that are drought prone as a result of increased dust and dryness due to, of course, the kicking of the ground and all of that. Of course, we see malaria intensifying in flood-prone regions. We've seen cholera, we've seen Rift Valley fever. We've seen that in Mauritius and many of the island countries where you don't have malaria, but we've seen chikungunya and other diseases of vector-borne origin expanding. And then when you look at drought, you're looking at measles outbreak, you're looking at respiratory infection, but beyond that, you're looking at mental health issues where people lose their source of livelihood in addition to climatic stress. So it suffices to note that the ENSO predictions have a compounding risk. Beyond the ENSO, the anthropogenic climate change activities that are currently ongoing across board has significant implications for the health sector. Now, when you juxtapose this with the El Nino, with the ENSO occurrences, you see that this is going to be like an incremental impact. And this has implications because you see longer and more intense heat waves, especially in drought-prone areas where there are no rains. You see heavier rainfall and flash flooding. We can see already what is happening in Accra recently. Deeper and more prolonged droughts, and of course, greater forecast uncertainty, because some of those forecasts deals with the oscillations in these regions, but there are also the human factors that are also altering other events. Now, what are some of the future health outlook as a result of these predictions? We anticipate more frequent compound disasters, simultaneous flood and drought across geographies, even in the same countries. We see overlapping epidemic emergencies. Currently, we're battling with Ebola outbreak in some regions. With these occurrences, if these outbreaks are not contained beyond this, before these predictions take effect, it might worsen the situations. We see rapid onset of food insecurity and climate-driven mass displacement. But even also, we'll be seeing growing pressure on already existing health facilities. We need to have growing pressure for increased surveillance and early warning systems, health workforce, and supply chain and cold chain systems. So the future challenge is no longer climate or health. It is climate change acting through health systems because they are actually significantly interrelated. What health system must do now? I have itemized 5 priorities that we should look at. And these are cross-cutting depending on the geolocations. Like I did say, I have categorized this broadly into 2 geolocations based on what this prediction has implications for. And so we must move from reactive response to anticipatory action. And that is the only way we can reduce morbidities and mortalities that are associated with the occurrences, like we've seen in previous predictions and the subsequent follow-out and actions. So climate-informed disease surveillance, we have been preaching this, we have been talking about this. I remember even as far back as the 67 GACOF that are held in Addis Ababa, these are some of them are very consistent actions that we can undertake, but many of them have not been fully uptaken by the health sector. So we need to have not just the conventional disease surveillance, the IDSR we have, but it must be climate informed, climate sensitive, and climate smart. So we need to integrate meteorological data, environmental indicators, and disease surveillance into a unified platform that allows us to make quick, informed, evidence-based decisions. We need to begin to think of our health infrastructures. Are they climate resilient? Are they climate adapted? Are they properly located in, not in floodplains, where for every little occurrence they are washed out? You know, and then we need to look at resilience retrofitting. For some of them, what do we need to do to prepare them? Some places are more prone, and we need to map those vulnerabilities and then be able to take proactive actions. Integrate climate health early warning systems, link meteorological services, MPHIs, and health operation centers to generate actionable health risk alerts from seasonal climate forecasts. Our national public health institutes need to move also from conventional epidemic and pandemic preparedness and response to climate smart responses. Recall also that about 56% of all public health events in Africa are linked to climate change. So it is critically important that we begin to see how we can mainstream this and then work across multiple stakeholders. What of community risk communication?
Try to wind up, Dr. Charles.
Okay, thank you. We need to drill down on those vulnerable communities that are more prone to these ENSO predictions and then be able to communicate the risk and also be able to guide them on anticipatory action. But much more importantly, our emergency preparedness and contingency planning in the health sector must be able to harness health intelligence. And this should actually cut across governance, intelligence in terms of operational seasonal climate forecast, using what has been shared here to be able to inform action, strengthening systems so that they become resilient, and then building communities so that we also have community resilience. So you have to have targeted risk communication, But you can't do this if you do not know the communities that are most vulnerable. So vulnerability mapping is critical. Just to end with this, Africa have conventional structures that can help it overcome some of this. And I think this webinar is one of the showcase of those structures. And we need to come together to work in unison to be able to address climate vulnerabilities and risks across all the various sectors. We must be able to become multi-sectoral, and that is the context of One Health we must bring to bear on this. And I've highlighted some of the things that we can do across all of these structures. For want of time, let me just end with this. ENSO is predictable. It has always been. And I think what is being shared here is the forecast showing the prediction. Now, impacts are preventable, and that is what we need to move the forecast from forecasting to actionable activities that can prevent impact. Climate services belong in health planning. Africa has institutions to lead, and we must be able to leverage this. The question is no longer whether El Nino will affect Africa's health. It will. That is conventional. The question is whether our health system will act before its impact on food. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very comprehensive presentation on health matters. I think it's very interesting to see how you've been able to clearly link climate issues with health. And some of the information that really came out is how climate change and health is expected to turn out in the coming years. And it's really interesting to really know much of this information. Thank you very much to our 4 panelists. Very enriching information that we've received. Well appreciated. So we will now go to responding to the questions. I've seen some of the questions have been responded to. Thank you very much to our panelists. If you will still need more clarifications on the responses given to you, we'll have a chance to. So what we can do first, we can have raise your hand so that we can have some airtime for you to ask questions to any of our panelists. And meanwhile, as we wait for hands to go up, I can read questions that have not been responded to. So maybe to Godfrey, someone is asking if there are any updates on Southern Oscillation Index, if the atmospheric anomalies are already coupling with the warming SSTs over the Pacific. Any updates on that? Then we also have to Brenda, someone is asking if there are likely anticipatory actions for the East Africa region during the forecast. I think maybe they're talking about the October to December season. So I think Brenda had given us a brief on some of the actions that can be taken with the expected impacts. So I think, Brenda, you can still give a shot on that. And then also once we share the slides, they'll be able to get all the information. So maybe we start with Godfrey. Any updates on SOI? Godfrey, it looks like can you hear us? Okay, so Godfrey, once he's back, he will be able to answer that if there is any updates on the Southern Oscillation Index. Then I see Monsa Hamadelnel. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. Go first, then we'll go to Vincent.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question is about if we have an idea about potential changes in the onset and the cessation of the rainy season in the Sahelian below average rainfall this Jeja season, and as well about do we have an idea about how the dry spells within the rainy season will change under this condition of the super El Nino?
Thank you very much. I think that's a question to our first presenter, Godfrey, and I'm not sure if he's hearing us. Godfrey, can you hear us?
Yeah, yes. Can I hear me?
Yes.
Can I hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
Godfrey, we can hear you. Go ahead.
There is an echo. Can you please? I'm still having some echo. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you clearly from this side.
I don't hear you.
Someone said if you have an echo, you do, is it Control M? Someone gave a tip. You can still give us a tip. Okay, so let's, if Godfrey is not able to hear us correctly, we can go to Vincent. I'm hoping that your question
Please
is not to
make
Godfrey.
in the chat.
Okay, you can respond in the chat, Godfrey.
Hello.
Hi, Godfrey.
Yes, yes. I
Can you
didn't
hear me
get
now?
well the question. Can you repeat the question, please? There was some echo, please.
Yes, sorry. So the question was, do we expect any updates on the onset and cessation for the JJS season in the Sahel? And then how are the dry spells expected to change within this season or something? Maybe I lost his name, sorry, but the question was generally on any updates on changes in onset and cessation and maybe the status of the dry spells.
Oh, okay, thank you. So for the onset, for the Sahel region, we do expect the late onset in the central Sahel, but also on the secession there will be Sahel and the central Sahel and the western Sahel. That means the country like Niger, Burkina, and the Mali, but also some pocket from Senegal on that as well at the regional scale. But those details on at national level should be well documented by the National Med Services, because in this seasonal focus, it's mainly targeting the large scale. So more details can be found at national level. So for the update, I'd like just to mention that the presentation I made, it was based on what we did with the collaboration of all RCCs across Africa in June, and we are planning to have another Africa Continental Outlook in August, then to provide an outlook for October, November, December, up to February, with for the target area, which is Eastern Africa as well Southern Africa. And this way, maybe we will communicate in due time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. And before you leave, there was also a question on the status of the Southern Oscillation Index. Is it already aligning with the warming SSTs?
Yes. In my slide, I showed where you can see clearly that's the trend. The where is like the area where we make measure, the scientists making measurement from Niño 0.3. It's already according to the observation from June, it's already in the trend. It was going, and all models agree that's the ENSO, it will, when the El Niño it's above 0.5, but now we are going toward it to 1.8, 2.0. So that's it's the highest value we did not observe for the recent decades. So the warming on the El Niño area, it's well present. That's where the El Niño condition is really clear on that. Over.
Thank you so much. So going into the questions on the chat, we'll come back to you for the colleagues who have raised their hands. We have a question on Ebola. Any more thoughts on Ebola and high rain in East Africa and October to December? Potential for flooding, displaced people, increased spread, decreased ability to respond. So what are the thoughts on that? That should be directed to Charles. Any relationship between Ebola and rains? Dr. Charles, if you can hear us, there is a question on the chat about Ebola and the rains expected over Eastern Africa during the October to December.
Okay, Eunice, sorry. Sometimes we are forced to multitask. I didn't quite get the question. If you could kindly help me re-echo it, I could attempt to answer.
So John Marsham is asking about your thoughts on Ebola and high rains expected in Eastern Africa during OND. with the potential for flooding and displaced people, therefore causing increased spread and decreased ability to respond. So what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, thank you, John. I think you've really raised a very critical concern, and I think I tried to mention that in my presentation. And one thing that I'm praying, in Africa we pray a lot. One thing that I'm hoping is that we're able to contain this before the rainy season takes significant shape, especially in terms of the predicted timeframes. Why I say this is because what, of course, flood causes displacement. One of the critical things we are more worried about Ebola is entry into other countries. And that is why, beyond trying to support the countries that are currently affected to respond, we've been trying to strengthen countries that are at risk to be able to be significantly prepared. So one of the major risks is cross-border transmission. And you know what climate change does to cross-border movement. People will move from areas, a natural human survival instinct. You want to move from areas that are hostile environmental condition to a place that is more habitable. And I think that is also some of the key drivers of conflict. So with the rains, we foresee people moving, maybe trying to escape flooding. We also see people moving in drought condition to places where they'll find pasture, especially among pastoralists. And many times those have been medium of cross-border transmission of diseases. So definitely the rains are going to heighten risks of transmission, not because the virus is carried by flood, but because people who might be incubating the disease might move across boundaries that were previously protected. And in those situations, most times, protective mechanisms at border are a little bit more relaxed because you want to also accommodate fellow humans in humanitarian emergencies. So yes, there are potential risks, but one of the things we're also trying to do is harness these predictions to be able to provide anticipatory action. Who are the communities that are most likely to move? Where are they most likely to move to? Especially those communities that are very prone are more vulnerable to these predictive outcomes of the ENSO. And then how do we sensitize them? How do we also ensure that they move safely across those borders? So we've been working with IOM and other partners to see how we can have a synchronized and harmonized preparedness outlook, anticipating what this may portend for the health sector, but also ensuring that especially infrastructures, health infrastructure at border posts are adequately sensitized and prepared to handle such emergencies when they occur. So yes, you did what you highlighted is true. It portends great risk, but I think anticipatory actions are being put in place as part of the preparedness and response plan of the Ebola outbreak.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles, for that response. I think it's an eye-opening. So we go to Vincent Otieno. Kindly go ahead and ask your question. Vincent, if you can unmute and ask your question. Vincent, you are...
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, thank you for such a presentation for our presenters. My concern is I can see the issue of urban anticipatory being overlooked. As you witnessed recently in Nairobi, there were a much higher number of deaths reported in any other than any other part of the country due to flooding that occurred before the onset of Mamre season, specifically to be on 6th of March. There was too much rain in Nairobi and so many people died due to that flooding. So why, please, can the presenters give an advisory for urban areas, especially now that you see an intensification of urban due to coming up of these affordable housing things and drainages being clogged. So what can you give for the urban areas?
Thank you very much, Vincent, for that question. So I think I'll allow Vincent to also respond. Vincent, are you able to respond to that?
Yes. Let me try and respond, Eunice. So when we look at the urban anticipatory action, it's quite different because flash floods have lead times of hours to days, not weeks. So I think the best thing to do will now be for the maybe to use the outlooks that we've given out so far to clear drainages and maybe unblock waterways, even as the event unfolds. And maybe we can also try and map as well as profile the high-risk informal settlements in the urban areas. And I think this has also been done in the past. So we can also take advantage of some of those risk maps that have been developed in the past, just to update them with maybe the new errors that have been captured. And then maybe we can also trigger SMS alerts. This is very possible if the responsible entities in the countries cooperate with the telcos just in the mapped hotspots. And then I think this is more of an institutional issue. So if this information can run, for instance, through the local governments in those urban areas, then we can be able to solve some of the emergencies that come out of flooding as a risk. Otherwise, over to you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I think that is really critical, ensuring communication, issuing alerts on time, given the short lead time, and also learning from our past experiences. So we go to the next question. Aduna, I can see your hand up. Kindly go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight one point before Adugna comes in, is in a contribution to what Vincent has said. And I just wanted to say that even we, as individuals and listeners, we also have a duty, because beyond all of what has been highlighted here, sometimes floodings in cities are caused as a result of poor waste management, many of which we are also contributory to. So we owe it, all of us, to be able to communicate to the areas we have influence on the need for proper waste management, because flooding do not just occur. Sometimes people block drainages, and that has implications during flash floods and flash rains. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is very important. It's everyone's responsibility. Aduna, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for this important, timely webinar. Yeah, one of the things I was trying to mention in our chat or this Q&A is that I think we are in a good position in communicating and framing how Illinois is going to affect different sectors. I'm very much delighted we are having such an important webinar. And one of the things I would like to, maybe flagship is about how can we make countries, member countries could be communicating their population at risk, those who are vulnerable. Is there any way we can map? Because this is going to be a report, and it is going to be a lesson for the another Illinois, which is going to happen more frequently. We used to have Illinois once in a decade, but this time it is becoming in 5 years and like that. So if we document how countries are responding or transferring the message to the at-risk population, and maybe engaging media and having some recordings from the grassroots level in the community, it may be helpful for us to have the records and support what is going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that is really very important, documentation for future. And remember, learning from the past is very key, so that we do not repeat our mistakes. Then thank you for that. So we go to Abebe. Go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Eunice, for giving me the chance. I think, like Adunya was saying, this is a very timely webinar, very useful webinar. I would like to congratulate ICPAC for organizing this. Having said this, my concern is especially for the people who presented on impacts, such as Brenda. As you are aware, there is civil war, conflict in the northern member countries of IGAD, like Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and so on. So my question is, what could be this implication, the implication of the conflict in terms of aggravating the impact of drought? I think it's important to highlight, especially when we approach the donors, the decision makers. It's really important that conflict and drought could have a very bad impact. So I would be happy to hear what is being done on that aspect. Over to you, Eunice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bebe. So I'll leave that open to any of our panelists who is able to respond to that. Brenda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's a really important question, because I think a lot of times when we're talking about early warning systems or anticipatory action, we are intervening in either conflict settings or different contexts that have tensions. And I think often what we kind of fail to think about when we're putting together kind of anticipatory action programs is that there is an interlinkage and there is kind of cascading effects there, that often climate hazards can worsen conflict. At the same time, conflict can also make intervening on a climate hazard more difficult if there's limited humanitarian access and things of that sort. And so I think what's important there is to keep in mind when implementing anticipatory actions, making sure that what we're implementing is conflict and protection sensitive. And there's actually a fair amount of work being done at the regional level on this. There's 2 different regional anticipatory action projects funded by ECHO looking at exactly some of these issues, looking at kind of multi-hazard AA with kind of a conflict sensitive approach. One's focused on the IGAD region, one's focused on the Great Lakes area. And so there is a fair amount of guidance being developed right now on how do we do better anticipatory action programming in those areas. And I'd be happy if it'd be helpful to pass along some of those documents after this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Yeah, we have 2 more hands. We'll also give an opportunity to someone who feels that the questions in the chat have not been responded to, but we only have 11 minutes as at now. So I'll give an opportunity now to Eunice Desfaye. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the great presentation. Actually, my question goes to ICPAC. During our GACOF 72 and 73 discussion, we have the energy sector to be included in this critical forecasting issues, but I didn't see having that the regions have the big reservoirs that could affect the energy sector, and this energy sector in turn affect those critical sector areas like agriculture, health, and disaster. But I didn't see that kind of presentation, so I was expecting that it would be included in the presentation, but hopefully next time. I'm saying this because it has it will be it will have a capacity of aggravating or easing the effect of the climate change on these 3 major sectors. If you are working on the effect of the ENSO on the energy sector. Thank you very much for the presenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is very important. And like you correctly said, energy sector is one of the sectors that we are planning to have it separate in as IGAD. Previously, we've had it together with water, but we're trying to have it as a separate sector. And of course, we would like to hear from everyone what they would want us to have our next webinar on. Please feel free to suggest in the comment section on the Q&A section to us so that we can know what you want to hear us talk about in our next webinar. So I'll now give it to Ali Quresh. Let's keep it short, and then we'll have Ali Hassan coming next. Over, Ali Quresh. You are mute. Unmute and let us have your...
Thank you for this nice webinar and the platform. I'm very much happy about this, the update and the networking, the coordination. I appreciate. I also recently participated, in ACBA Moderator Triangle, the data collection. My question is more related about the DRR and the CMDRR. I think in our area, mainly we have in the tree, that is the normally hazard we have is the flood and the drought. And the other one is sometimes, with the risk of the conflict, when there's shortage of pasture and water, maybe some intercommunal conflict. My question is about the DRR, about about the prevention, the mitigation measure, and the preparedness measure, the response, and also the recovery. And what are the measure and the preparedness that required in facilitation and the preparation activity that you need the DRR and the CMDRR project? Thank you, madam. And the steps, the emergency preparedness planning. Sometimes logistic is very important. The resource is also very important. Mainly in our community, in our triangle, like Dolo Ado, they normally face about the resource. When they need sometimes the networking, the earlier one systems giving information, maybe they have some time problems. And some communities are not active. They need to be revitalized on the ground.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much, Ali Koech, for that. And I think Vincent was able to talk about this in his presentation, but I'll give you 1 minute, Vincent, to just respond briefly on that.
Yeah, sure, Eunice. I think we had mentioned this, and maybe just highlight a few things across the DRR circles. In terms of preparedness, we need to update the contingency plans to El Niño scenarios. And maybe some of the common things that you can also do is position of relief, wash, and food item supply. And then another thing is early warning dissemination with the pre-agreed triggers, evacuation planning, and anticipatory financing. And then this also touches into the response bit of the circle. And in this, we can activate pre-agreed plans on the triggers before and not after the impact. And then in terms of recovery, we will now encourage, for instance, in the context of floods, it will be good to maybe resettle communities again away from high-risk areas that have been mapped. I could go on and on because there are quite a number, but there is also some sufficient responses in my presentation that was attached in the chat. Over to you, Eunice.
Thank you very much. And for everyone, we'll be able to share the recordings and the presentations. So not to worry, you'll be able to get all this information. Thanks. Then our last stand up is Ali Hassan. Kindly go ahead.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I first appreciate to the organizer and the presenters for their well-educated presentations that they have submitted for us. I have two questions. My first question is, how can climate information services be made more accessible, actionable, and inclusive for vulnerable and marginalized communities? The second one is, what role should locally led adaptation and community-based organizations play in designing and implementation anticipatory action? If you understood, that's my two questions. Thank you very much. And lastly, I have a request, which is to be shared the presentation is after the session in order to make revisions and benefit more. Thank you, and hand over, and I over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll hand this to Godfrey. How do we tailor climate information services, and what is the role of locally led adaptation groups?
Yeah, thank you, Eunice. Thank you for that. For to tailor the climate services, I think it's better to understand the needs for the user and see and how they can this climate information provided could meet their requirement or their needs. So that's normally they support the regional or continental climate services, climate centers should apply to the national med services in order to really support the communities in terms of the adaptation of those to mitigate in terms of the climate shock. So that's what I would propose as how can we deal with this extreme event. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Many thanks to our panelists. They were very concise, very clear on their presentations, and many thanks for responding to the many questions that we had for you. Many thanks to all of you for making this webinar a success. Thank you for attending, sparing your time to come to this webinar. We really appreciate the time that you've spared to be with us for this 1.5 hours. We also appreciate our partners who were part of this webinar. We appreciate the efforts that you put into this to ensure that this webinar happens. Thank you very much, and see you next time. On the suggestions that you've made on our next webinar, we'll be able to communicate to you on when we plan and what we will be talking about. Thank you very much from ICPAC. See you next time. My name is Eunice Koech. I've been your moderator. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.